On this episode of A Soul's Quest podcast, Omar and I are discussing the benefits and drawbacks of making a career change. Whether you're considering a career change or simply curious about the topic, join us as we delve into the world of navigating career changes. It's fun to watch you prepare for these episodes.
Oh yeah, why is that?
You're just like your own. I literally have a live meme in my home, in our studio.
Well, I'm glad that I'm amusing to you.
That's a good way to put it. You're amusing to me.
Yes.
It's fun to watch you sometimes. It's interesting. You're just in your own little world doing stuff that is just like,
I'm in my own
does
sandbox.
he not know that I'm watching him?
Nope. I'm in my own sandbox doing my own thing. Yep.
Do you let other kids play in your sandbox?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
My sandbox.
Mama never told you to share?
Mm-mm. She did, but he came at a price.
But
Mhm.
Okay. So how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm amused.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm just always funny how everybody's enjoyment is at my expense.
I was going to say, I'm not the only one. There are plenty of people who have had some amusement at your expense.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
I know.
All right. So, we're talking about navigating career changes today.
Yeah,
this is a
we are.
big one.
Oh yeah, this is an interesting one.
Yeah, this is
It's a
definitely
challenging one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's a challenge for everybody.
Mhm.
So we're going to talk today about the benefits and the drawbacks of career changes.
Mhm.
And so, of course, as usual, I'm starting with some quotes. I have two quotes
cool.
this time.
Oh, two. Okay.
Yeah. So the first one is by, and I might say the last name wrong. It's Seth Godin.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
If it scares you, it might not be, sorry, let me start over again. The
Mm.
first quote is by Seth Godin. If it scares you, it might be a good thing to try.
Yes.
I thought that was really interesting when I found that one, because I was like, ugh, it's true, but it's so scary. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? To try anything new.
No,
So-
it is. I mean, whenever you're going into a new stage on life, right, you're going to have your trepidations,
Mhm.
a new challenge, a new
Mhm.
idea,
Mhm.
A
A lot of questions that
lot
come
of
into
questions, a lot of fear, and it's scary.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
play. Definitely.
So you should give it a shot and going into it.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Much easier said than done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And the second quote, it was a good quote, though. I
Mhm.
thought that was really interesting. The second quote is, in a chronically leaking boat,
Mm-hmm.
energy devoted to changing vessels is more productive than energy devoted to patching leaks.
Yes.
And that is a quote by Warren Buffett. I thought that was really good.
This one interests me because I was reading that one today and I was thinking about certain situations and certain point. There are times that you are in a situation and you could try it as you may, it may not come. And that's like when the sunk cost fallacy kind of like comes into place, in which you need to cut your losses and move on, right?
Oh, you mean like if you're in an organization,
If you're in an organization,
you're not getting the things that you want,
correct,
promotions,
correct,
being valued.
been valued, or you have outgrown that position and there's
okay.
no other place to go, right?
Mhm.
I think this one is a very fitting
Yeah.
when it comes to the transition part, because the first one, it's really about maybe embarking on something new,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And learning something new and coming out of that cocoon.
Cocoon. You can come out of cocoon if you want.
You know what? I don't appreciate making fun of my accent. It's like, whatever.
I love your accent.
Thank you.
Cocoon.
Yes, coming out of your
Yes.
shell
Yes.
and going through the metamorphosis of it all,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then the second one is really acknowledging the fact that you may be in situations in which there's really nothing that you could do,
Mhm.
and at that time
There's nothing more you can do to change your situation, your current situation,
or whatever,
Yeah.
or a situation, particularly when it
Yeah.
comes to a career,
Mhm.
that at that time it's just better to just
Mhm.
abandon ship.
Right.
And
it's
that's
not,
a tough realization.
It
That's a
is.
tough conclusion to come to.
It is. And I think a lot of times when we're in jobs, that even jobs that pay well or
Mhm.
that give you good benefits and whatever, when we're going to talk about this in this episode, but there is that sort of feeling of, okay, there's nothing more here for me. Like,
Correct.
but to realize that and then to make the change, that's the part that we're talking about with the first quote about being afraid because I make good money here, or I get great benefits, or, I have this amount of time off, and so on and so forth. And that's challenging because you don't know what you're going to get. The grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Correct.
And that's a scary
And it's
part.
true. And it's true. And but again, and this is the part where it becomes both a philosophical questioning and also a very practical questioning, right? Because at that moment, you got to ask yourself, what is truly life about? Is it about just the security of it all? Or is life about you evolving and growing and constantly learning? So you have both points, which are both valid. And where do you find the equilibrium? That's what I find. That's what I find fascinating. So fascinating and intriguing about transitioning into something new. Because remember, people spend their whole entire lives working in a career or working in a job or working in something, right?
Yeah, a lot of people do.
From their schooling, their training, and sometimes you arrive to a point in which you have grown certain positions and certain things, and your ability to create or evolve gets limited.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Yeah.
That's just interesting.
And I think that what happens when you ask that question, a lot of times what happens is if you just settle for whatever your current situation is, then you really just don't know what else is out there either.
Yeah,
and
but
what might be of benefit to you, or the opportunities that lie in wake for you. You know what I mean?
But when you settle, right, why are you doing it is the question, right? Because those are valid questions. It's like, well, I got to do it because I need the money, I need my family, I need to maintain my lifestyle, I need to do all those things. And even though I may not like, and I may not be growing as an individual. So again, this is when there's some really tough questions that arise from you, and really, really like tugs at your core, at the core of who you are. Because then what's important? You made me miserable at a job, and you're not growing, and you're not learning, and you're becoming apathetic. But then, if I live here, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How much money am I going to make? Am I going to be making or living in the same thing? So it's a crapshoot.
Right.
And it's really not an easy thing, but it's something that needs to be thought about.
It's definitely something that needs to be thought about, especially if if you have a family or you have a significant other, because you have to take those things into consideration, right? You can't just make a jump into something else and make less money, or start with less benefits, or not have the things that you need to support your family without it making sense.
Yeah, but again, that's what I'm saying, that it becomes a philosophical question about what is the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
We're going back and forth on the same thing. Because what I'm saying is, like, then what happens is you die to yourself.
Correct.
And dying to yourself, is that worth... I mean, yes, our families are important, and supporting our families, that's a responsibility that we took on when you created the family and stuff like that. But at what expense? Do I lose myself because this is where I'm at? Or what do I do to make the change that's going to be the right fit for my family as well?
Exactly.
And for myself, more importantly, because if you die to yourself, then what good are you?
Yeah. And this is what the cause of turmoil is, and the difficulty when it comes to when you're transitioning in those jobs, and when you're going through this it's almost like a quiet death.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, what do I do? And what happens? And it's like, oh my God. And then you resent going to work, and you're not 100% there. And all these things begin to manifest themselves in many different ways, Yeah. And I think that happens to a lot of people more than we care to admit. And I think, from what I'm seeing in reports and things like that, the quiet quitting, and
what's quiet quitting?
There's since COVID and people had a lot of time to think about the way that we work and all the strive. There's been a lot of shifts in the way people look at work. People are not staying with companies as long as they used to. People are striving to kind of like retire sooner or find alternative ways of living, right? So because I think it comes to a point in which you start kind of like looking and figuring out, again, back to those philosophical questions as to what is a life worth and what is my life worth. And what is the point of life? Is it primarily to be productive, or is it also to enjoy? So you having all this, we're in a very critical stage right now in our societal progression, particularly when it comes to work, because we're facing that.
Yeah.
Where is the line between achievement and the whole question of work-life balance,
Yeah.
right? And the whole premise of work-life balance.
That's a lot more important now to people.
It has become, because again, our souls are asking that question, right? What is life about?
Yeah.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Mental health days. All this stuff comes about because it's like, where is it really the balance? Where do you strike that equilibrium between living to sustain your lifestyle, right? Or working for sustaining your lifestyle, or working for whatever purpose it might be.
Right.
Right. It's an interesting dichotomy that we have to kind of like look into whenever we go into that, So that's at the overall level.
Yeah. So because I know that you've gone through career changes recently. You left a job that was, for all intents and purposes, really limiting your abilities to grow and to contribute in a positive manner, right? Let's just leave it there. And you switched into now most recently a new career, so to speak, or you're working on that. And so how has that been for you in terms of not necessarily what you're doing and whatnot, but just like the feelings and things like that you've been dealing with?
Scary, nervous, sometimes frustrating, agonizing.
Agonizing.
For lack of better words, right? I think it's very challenging when you've done something for maybe, as long as I have, I'm 50 years in youth development. It's been
50 years.
15.
Oh, I was like 50. You 50?
Don't start with me.
Okay. Well, you look like you're older than me. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Well, you know what?
I got funnies today. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, go ahead.
So 15 years doing something, and you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the progression of the growth that I did within that industry. I did enjoy it. I started at the bottom, and because I really wanted to kind of like get into that field, and transition from sales into that, was making good money, not making as much money, but it felt like it was a calling, like a passion, right? But also there was a couple of realizations. Number one was the fact that I saw myself progressing and growing, but also hitting limits into which opportunities were available to me to expand, and to take more of a role. And even when I had those opportunities, just things happen because we have to recognize the fact that we do work with other individuals, right? And even though we might go to the same trainings, and even though we might actually see the same roadmap that is laid out, everybody has different interpretations of it. And sometimes, you look at things one way and somebody looks at it in one way, and sometimes those things don't mesh, and that's something that you have to be cognizant about yourself and about working with people. And you're going to try to do your best to work with others, but sometimes it just doesn't work out,
So then you had that realization that I got to move on.
Exactly. And then I personally.
So what was that? What was that process? Because obviously we're a unit, we don't have kids living with us anymore, but how was that for you?
It was, I kind of like came to a point in which decisions were being made that didn't align, number one, with the organizational mission, in my point of view. And there was a lot of things that didn't align primarily a lot with my own individual value system and the way that I view human resources. What I mean by that, how people were treated and how I was treated. So there's a lot of things like that you don't you particularly didn't agree with, that I didn't agree with. Make sure that I'm using my I statements, right? And that I didn't agree with. And there were things that happened in which, I felt that it was not, things were not done in good faith as working as a team, which is something that it was a value system of the organization. And it was, there was scapegoating and things of that nature. So when it comes to things like that, it's easy to become the victim, right? And it's easy to become the person that is afflicted by somebody else's do. But also, I had to realize at that moment that, number one, at that stage, at that level, it doesn't matter what I said. It didn't matter what ideas I brought up. It didn't matter my current or past performance, which I leave that up to other people to decide how my performance was, right? It didn't matter. Any of that stuff didn't matter. It was time for me to go because I felt it. I felt it. I always deliver on time. And when you deliver on time and you deliver consistently, there's no need for you to be questioned if nothing's ever happened and everything is being delivered on time. But when you start getting things taken away from you and things like that, then it's like, okay, I get the message.
Time for me to go.
It's time for me to go. But that's a scary and lonely place, right? Because,
and I'm sure a lot of people have dealt with similar situations, and some of them either are able to move forward and some of them are stuck, or they think that they might be stuck, depending on their circumstances.
Yeah, the most challenging part about that situation, personally, it was just not being heard and not being acknowledged and not having a sit-down conversation in which you're truly problem-solving, right?
Right, which then brings you to the point where you're still making the decision of, I got to go. This isn't aligning with my values.
And then it's like, you ask for it. Hey, can we sit down? Can we talk about this? There's got to be a way in which could actually resolve this. And it's like, no, you're, pushing your weight. And that's when you kind of like realize that the situation is going into completely different directions. So you have to come to a point in whether or not you have to see yourself and say, okay, what is my escape plan? Because I'm no longer needed in that situation, right? What is my escape plan, and what is it that I'm going to do?
Right.
So then that's when the interesting thing for me started happening, because I started with, we started with a Soul's Quest as a way of continuing what I've learned and continuing that idea of mentorship and helping other people and being a guide and all that stuff. And I truly didn't know exactly which direction it was going to go until more recently, in which, once I became like a coach, and then, some people suggested, hey, you probably should do some speaking and some training. And then, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that. I've trained and I develop people, but I've never done like, I'm going to go on my own and say, hey, look at me. I could give you a speech and motivate, yay, and do all that stuff. I did not, I've never embarked on that. Although there was always like an internal desire for me to do that. So now it's now formulating the plan, the idea of actually making that happen, and then working slowly towards that, getting the training. In the road through that was challenging, because there were some financial decisions that I make that that involves some planning, but also some hoping, and sometimes that didn't go as planned. So I had to adjust, and we had to take a couple of lifestyle adjustments that we had to do in order to continue to pursue that passion. So that is my personal anecdote. What about you?
Well, we can't go too far into this because we're running short on time.
No, we're not running short on time. We have plenty of time.
All right. So what about me? Basically, for me, it was just really, I've been with the organization that I'm at for a long time now, over 10 years. And in my capacity, it worked for me because I was in school. And I think what happened is that instead of taking advantage of other opportunities that sort of revealed themselves while I was present there, I decided, you know what, I'm in school. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to stay, even though I know I shouldn't, whatever. And unfortunately, and I don't want to trash my organization. I think it's a great organization. I think it's meaningful and it does a lot for our community. And I think that's really great. But unfortunately, there's nowhere for me to go there currently. And so when I got my doctorate, I was like, I don't mean to be whatever. It sounds egotistical, but I have a doctorate and it's a lot of education and I have to put it to work. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was a lot of, I made a conscious decision to stay in that role. But I think what happened was I boxed myself in and I didn't feel valued and I didn't feel that my opinion or my work ethics mattered to the organization as a whole. Most recently, my leadership, my immediate supervisor does see that value in me and he says it all the time, and whatnot, but unfortunately his hands are tied as well. So you can only do so much. And I realized that, and that was really hard for me because I was like, I really wanted to stay here, but I got to move on. So the most humbling aspect of this whole thing has been the job search. And I think for a lot of people that can be a daunting, long process and it beats you up. And it's almost like you question, I have years and years and years of education. I went through so much to get my doctorate, and then I'm disciplined. I do a good job. I'm capable. But you start to question those things about yourself. Like maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I don't have the background. And so I've had people tell me, and real people email me and say, we had over 400 applicants and, unfortunately we're going to move forward with people who had just a little bit more of this experience than you did. But it's still hard to get those emails. And I think sometimes it makes you feel like, well, I'll just freaking stay at my job then. I mean, I got nothing more, but I know I can't.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I've outgrown that. And our goals together and the things that we're striving for and the things that we want, our value system collaboratively and both individually are pushing me to that. I got to move on. You know what I mean? So for me, it's been the feelings and the emotions that I associate with it are pain, a little bit of crying here and there, questioning my confidence in myself, having low self-esteem occasionally, and just being a real person who experiences and it's been, like I said, just daunting. Like I can't think of another word because it is hard to apply for X amount of jobs. I won't say how many I've applied for and get rejections.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And I've gotten some, but they just haven't been the right fit.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, that's not what I'm looking for because we set up and established a value system that we want collaboratively and both and individually. And so that's been my experience with career changing, this quest that I'm on.
There's something that when you were mentioning that, right, there's something that popped into my head because sometimes there's a lot of cynics out there and a lot of nihilist people, and they will say to say something like that, right? It's like, well, you picked the wrong career because this and that and the other, and there's and I want to address that because it just popped into my head because I always have a critic in my mind, right? The gremlin mind always talking shit in my head, right? And so like one of the things that I want to address about that is that there is economies work like this, right? And societies work like this. It's about supply and demand, right? And at a certain given time, based on the technology, based on the societal needs, right? Some industries are more coveted than others in price, and because it's interesting for somebody going into the medical field, right? Medical field is one of the most, fastest growing industries in the world, in our societies, one of the most coveted places and things like that. And so is technology, right? So you're always going to have a higher capability of finding a certain type of work in those industries. But again, my point the reason why I bring that up is because not everyone is wanting to be in that field.
Yeah, it wasn't for me.
It's like not everybody and not everybody is aligns with certain industries. So for those people that are going through these different changes and are going through this different stuff, yes, there is the economic aspect of life. You know, there is no denying that. That is not that aspect. But then again, go back to that philosophical question as to the broadness of our society and figuring out where is our niche and what is it, how is it that I'm going to be live the life that I want, right? Within that niche, right? And that's the question. That's truly the question, right? And the point that I want to make when it comes to that, right, is that we live in a society that has a lot of options and a lot of choices, right, and which is good. But then I'm trying to tango and dance around this thing. But there's also this conception and this idea of success and happiness and the correlation between the two. And financial success and happiness and the correlation between these two that needs to be addressed when you're making these changes. Because, like you said, well, I wanted to align with my value system. I did get offers, but they do align with what I want as an individual and a person. And yes, you might have to feel a little bit more pain once you align yourself with that, which is, but you have to be cognizant of those things too when you're making the decisions. What is it that I truly want? How is it that I truly want to live? And I'd be remiss if I don't say that, because that's a part of a soul's quest, right? It's about how do I live and how do I live my unique life from that point of view. And it may not fit into the supply and demand chain that is already established in society, right? It might be something, but can you live that a fulfilling, fruitful life in something that is defined, that you pick? And that those are questions that are tough to answer, and those are things that you want to be able to answer because, well, I want this high paying job because I want to maintain my social status or the perception that people have of me, or I really want it because it aligns with my individual core values. Those are tough questions. And those are things that we need to consider whenever we're making these transitions in our job, from one job to another, a career to another, a profession to another, and so forth and so on.
I agree.
So I just wanted to kind of like touch on that.
Yeah, that's good. So, of course, there's advantages and disadvantages to making career changes. And so I kind of wanted to go into some of that because I don't think oftentimes when we're in the midst of feeling that things don't feel right in my current position, and whatever, it's important to kind of reflect on the advantages and disadvantages. In fact, I recommend, and this is not this, I know we're going to go into offering a couple of strategies for dealing with this, navigating the change of career changes. But, I was thinking about this after the fact, and I thought, pros and cons, and things something simple like that. I mean, we've used that technique in the past. Yep. So some of the advantage or the biggest advantages are that you're gaining new skills and experiences with getting a new career, right? So once you land that position that sort of aligns with your goals, that's a good thing for you. Yeah. So while you think that you might not be able to do the job, you're going to be learning things in every new job, right?
So, and I like that because this kind of like aligns with one of those values about being a lifelong learner.
Oh yeah,
right.
Definitely.
And it's like that. The thing is that, I'm not a big fan of graduations because one of the first things that they say, "Oh, you have arrived." It's like, no, you haven't. You just started.
Definitely.
It's like the moment that you settle in and you say, "I know." And this is it, then you're robbing yourself from new experiences. You're robbing yourself from opportunities to see different perspectives, good or bad. Right. And I was listening to something today that said that it's like good or bad, experiences are what they are. They're experiences. And those experiences, regardless of the positive or the negative feelings associated with them, these are lessons that you could learn. And as you progress in your life, you could utilize those lessons and the skills that you learn in order to continue to grow as an individual, because the point of life is to continue to evolve. The moment you become stagnant is the moment that you die.
Yeah. So that goes into the second one that I have here as an advantage, because you end up staying competitive in the job market because you're adding to your skill set.
That is definitely true.
You're pursuing definitely. Yeah. I think that when you add new skill sets too, and you add these things to your resumes, and even in your job, you get another job, you're in that organization, you're adding to your skill set, you end up getting promoted. So if finances or financial gain is something that's important to you, which I think it's important to everybody,
of course,
then that's a good thing,
Yeah.
So that's finding an organization that believes in that, and that's a value system within that organization, right?
And one thing that I tell people too is that don't limit yourself for the teaching that happens within your organization. It's like, I remember before social emotional intelligence was like a common word and all that stuff. I took this class from Case Western University on Coursera, where Coursera first like started growing, and it was all about Richard Boyatis, leadership through emotional intelligence, right? And I learned so much from that class, and I got a certificate, and I use on my resume. But look out for opportunities to develop your skills, whether you are in technology, whether you are in human development, whether you are in all these different things. I just I just went to a seminar a couple of weeks ago, and it was a cool experience just to see different people in different points of views, learning from their experiences and sharing with others. Something else that I do is I have coffee with some of my cohort and every Wednesday, and we share ideas and we share points, because you're constantly in the movement of improvement, and it makes you feel better about who you are and then the changes that you're making.
That's a good point. That's good. And even just reading to adding to your reading.
To your reading.
Reading books helps a lot.
I don't listen to the radio. I mean, I listen to audiobooks or as I'm driving, because there's so much so much stuff out there that is like, I mean, it may be just little nuggets that you pick up, and it's like, oh, look at that.
It's just making investments into yourself, into your development.
Making an investment into your development, yes.
Okay, so it also if you pursue passions and interests, they lead to personal growth and professional development, which we have already talked about. So kind of find what it is that you or what interests you. If books or audiobooks and whatnot, those things you can listen to those things in your office or at home while you're cleaning and stuff. So, I mean, I was doing that this afternoon. So
I just to give like a one of the books that I just finished listening to on my drive was Ray Dalio's Principles, right? And I talked about him before, but I was very impressed with just the simplicity, particularly because they used the hero's journey as one of his motivations to actually write that book. And I've learned a lot from a person that is one of the most successful people in the world, and the simplicity of his concepts and things like that. That was a business book that I've read. The other ones I kind of like listened to Wayne Dyer on my way as well. So all these different things that may not be correlated are things that are expanding your circuits in your brain, right? We're going to talk about all that stuff in later episodes, neuroplasticity and bringing new ideas into your mind to open up new channels and new perspectives and connecting new things, So just learn, just learn new things.
Yeah. Definitely. So of course, moving into a new career, it renews your sense of fulfillment, purpose. It improves your overall job satisfaction, which is great. You feel like you're making a contribution to an organization that's investing in you too.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
It improves your work-life balance. I think that's a significant advantage if you find the right fit for you, which is what I'm looking for.
Correct.
A lot of jobs require a lot of long hours or high stress. And so I think that when you're transitioning into a new career, if that's the job that you're in currently, if you transition, if you find that job that sort of caters to that work life, balance, then that's a good thing. And it's overall, it's something that is going to make your life, your personal, professional life better.
And here's the interesting thing, right? This is one of the things that is scary for me. Right, or a little nerve-wracking, is because if you can't find that place, you may have to create it, and that it's a different quest, it's a different journey, but it's one that is filled with a lot of beautiful things. That's like the core to the adventure of becoming an entrepreneur. and being your own individual self. This was kind of like the quest that I kind of chose, so to speak, just to be my own individual.
Yeah.
And that's
a lot.
That's it's quite a bit, but again,
there's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack.
But and that's another episode, because that is it's not easy to do that. But I think that on that note, it's important to consider the disadvantages then, because I think that this is in line with that, because when you're going on to kind of pursue your own thing, there are financial, the financial instability, that's a concern.
Yes. And I'll be completely frank and open. It was one of the mistakes that I've made about, I planned for, 6 months, I could handle this for 6 months, maybe grow to something and go and adjust if I have to. And sometimes, things don't work out as perfectly as you want them to be, so you have to adjust and you have to figure it out. But the idea is really to really plan and set some goals. Have a plan A, a plan B. First starts with your strategy, and be cautious. Be cautious. Be tactful about the potentials of the financial hardships that could come from making those transitions. Yeah. And prepare yourself.
And be prepared. Another thing that we're talking about finances and whatnot is thinking about, if you're going to make a career change into an organization that looks really great, it's positive, they have a really great environment, they have a good solid plan, they believe in social or personal development, and want to contribute to your growth, but you're starting at an entry level position, it's something to consider. You might have to start over, and that can be scary too for some people. I think about some of the jobs that I was offered or that I looked at, and I was like, man, that's like starting there. Like, I'm past that, but the organization looks great and it sounds good, and you know what I mean? So that's something to consider. And some people might not be okay with that. They might think, sometimes you got to remove ego out of that whole process of thinking, because I think ego can really put up barriers for you in terms of growth in general, just as a blanket statement. So, and then I think what's really important is just that there's a lot of stress involved in it. So for me, what's really been helpful is just having that, that's a disadvantage, but if you have a good support system, then you can kind of, you're mindful of those things and you have somebody who's supportive. Yeah.
And you know what, to dealing with stress, particularly in situations like this, some of the techniques that have helped me, right? It's really, and I learned this from going through this coaching training and all that stuff, right? But it before, it's really truly being clear about what it is that you want, like visualizing, having that creative visualization of what kind of life you want to live, how do you want to live, where, have that picture. I know that it sounds like, oh, that sounds so woo, out there, but when you have an idea of where you want to end up, that actually gives you the perspective. So when you are down, you'll go back and you're reliving, oh, this is what I'm envisioning. Number one. Yeah. Number two, create daily practices in your day, whether it'll be physically working out.
You're giving away some strategies here.
Oh, okay.
That comes up next.
Okay.
No, but those are great. I agree. I think those are some of the things that are important.
You have to have a plan also for managing your stress, because it is going to happen.
Definitely. So having that support system is important. So, and that kind of just leads into, we talked about the challenges, the disadvantages of career changes. And so, of course, we have some strategies to offer for implementing, for people to implement as they go through the quest of a career change.
Sure. Yeah.
So the first one is so when you're making career changes, it's important to figure out what you want to do, right? Where you want to go. And we've talked about this already, but I think it's important to start with maybe taking a self-assessment, a personality assessment, to kind of determine what career aligns with your goals and your values and whatnot. So personality assessments are really helpful for doing that. So if you're confused about what you want to do, that is that's a strategy that it's through and through, it'll help, at least help guide the decision making.
Yeah. The second thing is networking, right? This is one of my weak points, because a lot of people think that I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. I'm very shy and kind of like difficult to connect sometimes. But it says here, it's not what you know, but who you know. Networking can help you gain insight into the industry you're interested in and connect with professionals who can offer guidance and advice. Attending network events, joining online communities, and reaching out to people in the field you're interested in can also be helpful.
Very helpful. People are on LinkedIn. I get people reaching out to me all the time on LinkedIn. Hey, can I have a Zoom call with you, etc. Right? Okay. Number 3, do your research. So research your desired career path to gain a deeper understanding of the skills and qualifications required, as well as the job outlook and potential earnings. This can help help you to make an informed decision and set realistic goals.
Excellent. Yeah. Education and training. Going back to that, lifelong learning. Consider obtaining additional education or training if necessary to gain the skills and qualifications needed for your desired career. This may involve taking courses or pursuing certifications.
And finally, recognize that obstacles may arise during your career change and develop a plan to overcome them. For example, if financial instability is a concern, you may need to adjust your budget or consider taking on a part-time work or a part-time job while you transition to your new career. So develop a support system, such as a mentor or a career coach, to help you navigate any challenges that might arise.
Awesome.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Comment below with your thoughts and additional ideas, and remember to stay connected by sharing and subscribing.